financial and investment companies and teaches at the Naval Academy, where her performance awards are noteworthy. She successfully applied her skillful legislator abilities federal and state in her approach to solving problems. To help fix the educational system of the subject matter, her husband, Mark Schifanelli, a retired U.S. Army Special Forces officer and now an attorney, ran a successful election to their school board, and they fixed the curriculum. And of course, she's running as a lieutenant governor candidate with Dan Cox. So without further ado,
Yay!
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. It's really a pleasure and honor to be here to talk to all of you and take your questions. It's been a heck of a year for me. Thank you very much. A year ago, I started, I never wanted to be in politics, and a year ago I started with a pure parental initiative to stop critical race theory, to stop division of children among each other based on their skin color. I had no idea what I was getting into, and I haven't stopped. I cleaned up my county. It's a Queen Anne's County. I was able to get people to join me, and parents and grandparents and the entire community joined me full and wholeheartedly, worked 13 days straight at different polling locations. We created a strategy that works, and we were able to get rid of ineffective and toxic people at the school board. We got rid of toxic, divisive superintendent, and now we have thriving children. 7,700 kids went to school in June without masks, and to catch up on math and learning and science and everything they missed because of the 2020 schools shutdowns and closures. Today I'm here to explain a couple of things I learned when I ran a successful campaign for my school board, and I chose to fight for everybody else's children, because just because our kids are great and thriving doesn't mean that your all children should be stuck with masks, and parents and teachers and people who work in government offices forced to choose between their jobs or to get experimental gene therapy, which is a COVID-19 shot. I think that that is a humongous erosion of individual liberties. And when Dan Cox approached and talked to me about running for lieutenant governor with him, I didn't have to think. I was doing it on my own already a year prior, and that was before Loudoun County in Virginia parents stood up against the same toxic, divisive politics that was creeping into your children's schools. What I noticed is that what's happening to you, my dear fellow Americans, happened to me some 20 years ago. I grew up in communist country that's no longer in existence. That's Yugoslavia. And that country went through the same exact process you guys are going through. One of the differences between Yugoslavia, where I grew up, I was 28 years old when I came here. I got my highest degree in that country. At the University of Belgrade, I obtained my highest degree in economics and finance, and I published a book about financial markets and financial derivatives. When I came here, I didn't come here as an uneducated and unskilled labor. I came here as a fully educated, the highest education you can get in economics. So one of the differences Yugoslavia did not have, and you do, is the United States Constitution and Maryland Bill of Rights. That is it. What keeps us alive is the Constitution and Maryland Bill of Rights. One of the things that I noticed for the past 20 years, I've been here for the last 22 years with my husband, is that this is truly a land of opportunities. This is the land where one can thrive as much or as little they wish. I came with my accent, the one you can hear, and you welcomed me with your hands wide open. Not only that, but you gave me something that I couldn't believe would be possible. I came as financial advisor, and I started my practice at Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner and Smith in 100 East Brad Street, Baltimore. And my job was to find people who have retirement assets and savings, design their portfolios, provide for their retirement, do their estate plan, provide for their tax efficient management, design the entire investment, do an entire investment analysis. And the question was, where would I get people to trust me with this accent and trust me with everything they've got? That wasn't a question. That was never a question. You never judged me based on my accent. You never judged me based on any kind of prejudices that one could assume people would have when it comes to financial advisors inquiring about somebody else's savings. You've never done that. I became a very successful financial advisor at Merrill Lynch and worked there for 10 years prior to its own demise in financial collapse in 2008. And as a result of that debacle in the financial system, that sort of has trails of what's happening to us as a nation. Nothing happens in isolation. Nothing happens without connection to something else that happens before. So these things that are happening are slow erosion of our economy, our society, culture, and families. So this is an erosion of society, and it's going to be up to us to stop it. And it will be up to us to educate those who do not believe that my words are true. So having said that, in 2009, I ended up going through law school education because financial institutions had decided not to play fair with employees. So I decided to pursue litigation against the largest financial firms on Wall Street, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and I successfully prevailed in all of those lawsuits. And as a result, 22,000 employees received their deferred compensation that otherwise they would not have gotten had I started pushing for justice and fighting for them. I was one of them, so I had to fight for my own deferred comp because otherwise they wouldn't pay it. So they did. They paid my own thing, and everybody else got their pay, and people ended up being happy. But as a result, I became a lawyer. I'm barred in Maryland, I'm barred in New Jersey, and in federal courts, in state courts, and then I thought that was the end of my litigation practice. I will just, do family law, do a couple of estate plans and wills, and that will be the end of that. And that was not what God had in His mind for me. My youngest one received a letter from the superintendent last year, 2020, June 5th, to join her and the Black Lives Matter organization in protest against the police, and while the schools were closed. To me, that was a warning sign that the communists and socialists have come knocking on my door, and I had nothing else to do but stop it. So I organized a successful campaign. One of my first volunteers to run for the school board was my husband, and the social justice activists have viciously ensued campaign to cancel me, which is something that happens to everybody. At least I wasn't discriminated. I was treated equally like anybody else that tries to cause for reason. I was called racist, I was called white supremacist, and everything in between. The B word was sent to me a couple times. Threats were pretty much weekly. So my state's attorney was parading with the police officers around my house because the threats became serious, and we lived in fear for about the entire summer because I didn't know who was going to try to harm me or my family members. And I was just a little citizen, just a parent. I wasn't running for office. I was nobody. I was just a parent who said it is not appropriate to use children and march with Marxist organization that was at that time burning the streets and businesses in DC, Washington State, Chaz, and in Washington, Portland, Oregon was in flames. So I did not think that was appropriate for an educator, none other than the superintendent, to engage in such actions. And I was attacked. Now, obviously, fast forward, we won. The Queen Anne's County parents and citizens won. But I'll tell you, it was brutally hard. We had to work 24/7 from June 5th through early in-person voting. That was October 26th through November the 4th. And there's only one way to win. The only one way to win anything. And that is when you take personally issues that are happening to you and you fight for your life. This is the fight for our lives. This is the fight for our lives. That is, there's no other way. When someone comes to your children, mandates that they get something you disagree with, and enforces medical procedures onto little children, when they cancel your right as a parent, and when the government decides that they're going to co-parent with you, or moreover, cancel you as a parent and decide whatever they want with your child, that it becomes a personal matter. Whether you're a grandparent, whether you have, adult children, 67% of your taxpayers' monies are going to fund failed schools in the state of Maryland. And it's time for all of us to stand up and stop it. And how we're going to do it is going to be the question. There's going to be a lot of misinformation. I have been probably silenced. As you can see, I'm not on any TV. Fox News is not interested to talk to me. And nobody else is interested to have me speak the truth. Nobody likes to hear the truth. You know what they've done to President Trump. No one wants to hear the truth. But if we don't face the music, if we don't face our challenges, our society is going to go further down into socialism. So let me explain and stick with the subject that I was tasked to do. What is CRT and how it is imposed on children? CRT stands for critical race theory. It is only a part, it's a piece of a bigger and more complex puzzle that's called critical theories. And the critical theories that were created in Germany were in German academia, were transferred to the United States through the passage of liberalism. And those theories analyze what causes economic inequalities between people. And these are nothing other than hypotheses and theories. Few of those people from academia considered that if you have a different skin color, somehow that is the cause of discrepancy between your particular outcome, how you're going to end up in life. So if you're black, by default, you're going to end up poor. If you're white, by default, they said you're going to end up better off, which then created the words. There's a different platform, there's a different words that they use, such as white privilege. So let me dispel the notion that there is no such thing as white privilege. No one in America is privileged because they have a different tan. No one. That is the first and the biggest issue that is being imposed to our children through our educators, as if that is true. It is not true. No matter how many times they will say that, it's simply not true. Your outcome in America depends specifically and solely on your grit, perseverance, education, skill, and hard work. And it's an anecdotal situation. Again, I started my private financial planning business that was very successful. It had nothing to do with my culture. To the contrary, people were curious to learn more about me. But no one gave me their business because of my accent or because of my skin color or because of anything other than they wanted to know the results. What will I do to help them? Number two, the race part is interjected into American educational system to divide children and justify failed school performance of some black students. Instead of seeking the real root causes of why, for an example, black boys underperform other students in, let's say, Baltimore City, which is not always the case in my county. Our student of the year was a black female in 2020. The issue becomes justification, and the entire light is transferred onto non-solvable problem, which is skin color. There's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can solve. You can't fix your skin color. You were born with it. And the question then becomes why? Why are they doing it? Well, they're doing it to divide us. But why would they want to divide us? Why would anybody want to divide us? Well, who thrives when Americans are divided, when we're living between each other in hate, and when we don't trust each other and we trust our neighbors? The globalists. The globalists. So now flashback. I grew up in Yugoslavia in Europe, and the globalist movement started with Maastricht Treaty in 1980. That was the time when Western European countries, under the guise of NATO, decided that they should get away with borders. They don't need borders. They're all part of NATO, they're all part of Western Europe, and borders and independent currencies only create trouble and problem when they trade with each other. So transferring Deutschmark into, let's say, Italian lira was a cumbersome process. People trying to go from Austria to Italy had to wait on the border for quite some time, and if it was winter and they have to go through the Alps, it becomes cold, they're stuck in the snowstorms, and the idea was, let's just try to globalize the market and economy, make a free flow of labor and capital between Western European countries. So what they did was they said, well, we're just gonna get away with the borders, and we're gonna erase the individual currencies. In other words, we were going to erase individual identification of the country itself. Deutschmark is not going to be Germany anymore, a German currency. It's just, we're going to call it a euro. And the central bank was erected in Frankfurt. Frankfurt is going to be a central bank, a town, a city, where European Central Bank is going to be located. And the conversion is going to be 1-for-1, and overnight, all the countries in part of NATO became with open borders, and they had that one currency, which was euro. And the government of this globalist idea in Western Europe, they tried small, they tried with one piece first, was in Brussels, and they decided that every country is going to have their representatives there, and that's what we're going to do, and that's how we're going to try to open up our economy for the purposes of free flow of labor and capital. And then they decided that it was time for Yugoslavia to break up, because Yugoslavia was bordering Western Europe, and consisted of 6 states, which would be just like 6 states in the United States. Every state was an independent state, and Yugoslavia had its own borders after World War II, and they fought 2 world wars to finally get their borders. And so Europeans, the Western Europeans, were saying, well, since the communist dictator Marshal Tito passed away May 4th, 1980, by 1990, it was time to break Yugoslavia and open borders and force independent states to join or to be associate members to the EU, which coincided, and it was carefully planned, with the disintegration of the Soviet Union as it was into Ukraine and Belarus and Russia. Czechoslovakia was broken into Czech Republic and Slovakia. So there was this process of breaking the country apart, making the smaller chunks, and then those smaller little states, countries, were supposed to, be associate members to the EU and open borders so the the capital and people can flow. Um, they went far to all the way to England, and one of the things that British people did not want to do is to get rid of the British crown. I mean, that was a British pound. That was a pretty big deal for them. And so they kept British pound, which was at that time 3 times stronger than euro or dollar, which was in the early 90s. So I remember that vividly. I wasn't, I'm not that young, and but Serbia and Yugoslavia suffered through 2 world wars, and they really wanted to keep the country together. They wanted to close their southern border because southern border was uh, very difficult to maintain due to the geography. I mean, the big mountains, it's impossible to build a wall when you have alpine region. And through those alpine mountains in Yugoslavia, we had a lot of Muslim radical Islamic mujahideens coming in, and burning Christian churches that were there since 9th century, 8th century. You had iconography that is UNESCO's under the protectorate of the United Nations cultural heritage. It's a huge richness of culture and history at the time. 18 Roman emperors come from Serbia itself. So, and so the radical mujahideens were storming through that, what used to be Yugoslavia, and they were supported by the Democrats. They were supported by Bill Clinton at the time. Madeleine Albright spent more time in my country than in here, and they were pushing for bombing. They were pushing for punishment because Serbs refused to join the globalist movement and to join on the bandwagon that was pushed by the globalists. It is so sad to admit, but when I met my husband 22 years ago, I told him, this is going to happen to America. And it's happened. I just knew. Anybody supporting radical jihadists is out of their mind. I mean, Serbs lived over 1,000 years under their thumb. If anybody knows their culture and what they stand for, it is to kill non-believers. No matter how good you can be to them, they will not be good to you because you're a non-believer according to their religion. It's a very dangerous culture. So when President Obama sent $140 billion, or $1 million, I don't even know exactly, in that airplane to Iran to develop their nuclear arsenal, I knew that was such a terrible time for the United States. Not so much Israel, but United States. And everything that's happening to us is heading towards disintegration of America and forced globalization, so that elitists, those who own tech companies, banks, are the ones who are going to control what you say. I am predicting that your bank accounts are going to be next. You're going to be, replacing dollars with just a plastic card. And as a matter of fact, President Biden's Treasury official had suggested similar action. Why? Because if you say something they don't like, you just don't get access to your cash. If you don't have access to your cash, you buy no bread. That is that simple. So why am I telling you this? We are in the same boat. And there's so many people that are speaking and running this country on a superficial basis. This is a complicated issue. This is a political, geopolitical, economic, social, cultural decline. And why do they want this? Why do they want this? Because there is this utopian idea that socialism works. And as you can see, the Democrat Party had went further and further and further to the left. And the Republican Party, some of them decided to try to find a middle ground. And their middle ground became further and further and further left. Right. And somebody had said to me, how on earth are you going, you are so radical, Gordana, how on earth are you going to run for the state of Maryland? Do you realize this is a blue state and you need to learn to find the middle ground? Well, let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. I am not going to negotiate with anybody when it comes to your personal body and your personal freedom. As an attorney, I know when the time
it is to walk away from any kind of deal that impacts your body, your life. Because negotiation about your life would end up being, do you want 3 shots or 1? Which one do you want? Not whether you should have any or 1 or 2, but whether you want 3 or you want 2, let's negotiate. No one should negotiate items that pertain to your body, to your integrity, to your health, to how you raise your children, how they're taught in schools, and what they're taught. They need to be taught how to critically think, how to dissect evidence, how to figure out what's a fact versus what's somebody's opinion. They need to know how to be self-sufficient, productive members of society. They're not there to be told, go here, go there, and turn them into little, obedient soldiers, which is what children in China are, or children in Russia are. So socialism doesn't work based on one simple premise. We are not all the same. We are very different. We all have different needs, and we cannot be discounted to the same denominator. Here's a bread for you, here's a gallon of milk for you, and get the hell out. That's how people live in socialist countries. I lived through it 28 years. I remember I would open up a refrigerator, there would be 1 margarine and nothing else. And I'm willing to bet there is not one person in this room that if I were to walk into your house and open your refrigerator, stuff will start falling over me. I mean, we are used to particular luxuries, and now we're going to see these luxuries slowly chip away. Not just the gas prices, not just economic conditions that are going to become more severe. Some people are going to be suffering, and those who have significant savings, those savings are going to be eaten up with inflation. And what do we have to leave for our children? So what we do need to do is to, pull ourselves up, which we can, and become more involved. Like, this crowd is very involved. I recognize so many of you. But what you need to do is to transfer your compassion and love for Maryland and this country to every single person you know. Your neighbor needs to learn this. And if I need to come and speak, and if I need to teach history and lecture geopolitical effect on America right now in the 21st century, I will do it. I guess God had that in plan for me, so that's what I'm doing. Critical race theory divides children on race. People in my country were divided on based on their religion. But the bottom line is they're pitting us against each other. They want to weaken our society and trust that we have with each other in order to turn the United States of America into this globalist country run by the elitists and the United Nations. One of the things that we kind of forgot, and the topic is great, is asking, what are the duties and responsibilities of the Board of Education? So, local Board of Education is your legislature. These are the people who you elect, and these are the people who have to listen to you. You're the voters, the Board of Education works for you. It means that's simple. The Board of Education doesn't work for the State Board of Education. And the State Board of Education doesn't dictate local Board of Education what they're supposed to do. State Board of Education is the executive branch. It's part of the executive branch. Local Board of Education is your legislature. And in America, those who had civics, we know that we have legislative, executive, and judiciary branch. Each branch needs to stay in their own lane. They're separate and apart. And each of them have their own role to play. The State Board of Education's job is to assist the governor set up the general policy on the overall scope and duties of what Maryland education should look like. They're not there to do day-to-day management. They're not there to tell you if you sneeze, you can't come to school for the next 7 days unless you do the CPR test. That's not what the role of State Board of Education is. That's not the role of superintendent. They are there to set a big picture idea what we want for Maryland children as a whole. Local Board of Education, those are your people. Those are the people who you elect. That's what you need to investigate. Who is your representative running for the Board of Education? They have to set up curriculum. They're the ones who set curriculum, not the state. Local Board of Education sets the curriculum. Okay? And local Board of Education has one and only one employee, and that is the superintendent. That's it. The superintendent works for local Board of Education. The superintendent doesn't work for the state superintendent. The superintendent works for the local Board of Education. So the superintendent's job is to run and execute whatever the local Board of Education tells the superintendent should be doing. It doesn't work the other way around. However, we are in this predicament because it was upside down for the longest period of time. So what happened? People ran for the local Board of Education, and in my county it was the same thing. Restaurant owners, local business leaders, they wanted to run, and they did. But then they said, look, I'm just a restaurant owner. I'm just a small business. I know nothing about education. So I'm going to defer my decision-making policy to someone who is an expert. And the expert is the superintendent. Well, she or he, they know better. What do I know? I'm just a small business owner. The superintendent should know everything, so we're going to listen to whatever the superintendent says. That is upside down. It doesn't work that way. We selected, as an example, one of the best superintendents that you could find, just in January. We had an ad, and we had her there. And when we selected her, she went through the rigorous process, and she was going through an interview. One of the board members suggested that we can't select superintendent. We know nothing about superintendent. We need to find some experts. We need to find teachers to tell us whether this person is better than the other. And, my community is really loud and vocal, and they got encouraged and empowered after a year. So now they're all up in arms, and they were texting and posting on Facebook, excuse me, do you ask your waiter to select your manager or your chef? It doesn't work that way. So stop, go back, let the Board of Ed do what the Board of Ed is supposed to do, interview superintendents and the candidates. So they did. So we selected our best superintendent ever. And then we got a phone call. Now, other people from other counties heard who we selected. And there's not that many people who have licenses and qualifications to run for the superintendent. And other people said this. Well, we heard that this so-and-so is not the best. She did this and this and this and that. She kept the schools closed. She was doing this and the other stuff. So how do you say she's so great when she really wasn't? And she had 17 years of bad practices in some other county. Here's the explanation. She was doing what the state superintendent told her to do. She didn't know better. So she came to our county, and she continued with the same poor practice. But this time something happened differently. Our newly elected Board of Education said, time out. This is not how it's supposed to. Who told you to send this letter to the children and to parents? And our superintendent said, well, that's how it's done. That's not how it's done. It may have been done wrong, upside down way, but that's not how it's done. The way it's done is, the board votes the policy. We tell you what the decision is, and then you execute and send the letter the way we tell you to. Otherwise, you're sending policies that we never voted on. That doesn't work that way. And she was sincerely and honestly surprised. She had to stop to think for a little bit to say, you know what? Never dawned on me that Yeah, well, the state superintendent doesn't pay my paycheck. You guys do. So why was I doing it that way? I don't know, but I actually get it now. I get it. And she truly is the best. She's into finding out discrepancies between boys and girls in their achievement. We actually, in our school, in our county, had actually paid careful attention on what books the students are reading, unlike in any other county. So, in other words, our children do not get indoctrinated with critical race theory only because the books that were promoted and proposed to our board were voted down. And our Board of Education, with newly elected majority, said that's not coming in. However, sadly, I was, not so shocked, but disgusted with the book that was offered to Howard County students, and that book was a pure definition of pedophilia. And the book that was given to these students is it's called Gender Queer, Wild Lake High Media Center in their library. It was oral sex explained in cartoons to children in public schools. Yes.
There's another book called Lawn Boy.
That's another one. Lawn Boy,
What's it called?
Chesapeake High School.
High School.
There you
What's
go.
it called?
Lawn Boy.
Lawn.
Lawn Boy. So that's not in my county, but that's what you end up having when you have ineffective and terrible Board of Education and superintendent. Yes. Yes, I have found out. It's easy. The part of this critical race theory that we're talking about, it's part of the, as I said, critical race theory goes further. Race is one of those theories. Critical gender, critical sexual orientation. As a matter of fact, since I dove and threw myself to the wolves, I was getting into all of this Child Protection, Protect Act of 2003, Child Pornography Act. These things are criminal that were given to the children to deal with. But what it is that critical gender theory. They're trying to impose confusion on children as early as 10. Whether there should be a boy or a girl, whether their sexual orientation is one way or the other. One of the parents, now they're all sending me a questionnaire that just recently was sent to one of the schools, and the questionnaire was approved by the state, and it was the state of Maryland, and it was a questionnaire about how you feel. It's on a psychological basis. It's do you feel like a guy? Do you feel like a girl? Do you feel confused? Do you feel happy? Do you feel sad? Do you feel this? Oh, identity, here it is. It says, here it is. Identity encompasses the memories, experiences, and relationship and values that create one's sense of self. So here we go. These are the questions, how to answer: gender, ethnicity, race, religion, socioeconomic status, language, marital relationship status of your parents, of your household, your family size. These are particular surveys that children get in schools, and you have no idea. Yeah. You have no idea. It took a lot of work for this parent who was very upset because that child came home and told her mom, we were getting this crazy looking survey about our gender, race, religion, socioeconomic status. Not only that, but Maryland Department of Education have created Maryland Families Engage, and they want to combat racism since birth. This was last year when I got it, apparently since birth. So there is this program that goes to 2020 Maryland Family Engagement Summit, and this particular, we are talking about the time when children were stuck in the houses due to COVID, yet these people were very busy. They were extremely busy deciding how they're going to attack mental health of babies, structural inequalities in America. This is Department of Education. This is the Department of Education with its subsidiaries and nonprofits that are promoting platforms and ideas that are intended to divide us into the socialist communist country. Why do I force this socialist communist idea? Because just most recent culturally responsive pedagogy date October 15 talks about teachers treating different children from different cultures and countries differently. And in this slideshow that I was able to obtain, it talks about individualism versus collectivism.
Whoa.
Okay. Individualism versus collectivism. When you are an individual, you are a loner. When you are, this is for children. So this was a training material for teachers, how the teachers will be teaching children. If you are collectivist, then you are on the right track. The collective rights are more important than individual rights. And that is a pure communist platform. That is pure communist platform. Not only that, not good binary. Here it is, countries, and it is about Earth and global, countries here, and they're talking about the rest of the world understands and accepts collectivism, but we don't. So we are dark. So we are bad. So that's why we are bad. We are, as a country, we are bad, and that is why they're doing it. Ubuntu, I am because we are. There's a slide between individualism, pull yourself up to your bootstraps. Remember, AOC said that is physically or whatever. Competition is bad. Everybody needs to participate. Being a winner is divisive. Stating individual character, expressing individualism is bad because you're standing out. I'll tell you, I've never seen, my husband is a big reader. He's a huge reader. We don't have a TV in the house. We've never owned a TV. But we have a lot of books. And I think Amazon is making rounds at my driveway every single day with new books. But we do, we're just a weird couple. And very boring too. But one of the things that he did 20 years ago, he came across this book. My son is in the Army, and we got it as a part of the, I don't even know what was it, a little present or something, and it was a rainbow fish. Anybody remembers that book, Rainbow Fish? I've never thought of it that way because it was 20 years ago, but he did. He ripped that book in shreds and tossed it, and he said he was so mad. I've never seen Mark mad. Anybody that knows Mark, he is the mildest personality ever, but he ripped that book in shreds. And what book is about, it's for children, and the book talks about one fish that is so beautiful and so special with scales of all colors, and everyone's watching that fish, and everyone is so jealous about her beauty. And she was so alone because everybody were upset that she's so special that, she was alone. And she was sad, and what did she have to do? So she had to pull all the scales from her and give each fish in the sea one scale so that they would be friends. And that is how the children need to learn to, quote, share. I think he was so upset. So now he said, so we had this one beautiful fish, now that we got all the other ones ugly. Now nobody's pretty. But the fact of the matter is, instead of identifying each skill we have and unique features we are strong at and fostering that and promoting that, we have to dismantle the system of individualism and uniqueness, and we need to go towards the Marxist doctrine of collectivism and Ubuntu theory. Here it is for teachers. October
Spell
2nd.
that. Ubuntu.
Ubuntu. Ubuntu. Independent group shows success. Individuals do not. So don't get, yes.
What organization made that decision? Somebody had to
This
sign
is
off
Maryland.
on it.
This is what the, well, I printed the slides. This wasn't printed. This was presented by this equity specialist, but it is promoted and organized by a resources that the state of Maryland offers for teachers training. So this is the teachers training manual, which is their professional development. And so these are approved teachers' professional development slides, and came to me from a teacher in public schools. Scientific information for social construct. They're trying to experiment with children in a different social settings. When I opposed our superintendent, her training for everybody, the children, was to bring children when the schools reopen of different races, facing them, you know, black child and white child face each other. And then there was a particular gentleman who had a very suspicious criminal justice history, and he was supposed to teach that class. Part of my county was very upset about that. But that gentleman did speak about this training, and it was the group was, or the organization was called STAR, S-T-A-R, Students Talking About Race. And they were trying to, quote, break the kids into crying so that they start crying as they face each other and face the history of racism. So that's why I'm doing this. I can't imagine any child going through this. Collectivism is rational, contextual. Child is a member of community. Parents do not have rights over their children. It's the child is a member of the community. We have to view things in a collective manner. Now, which is really unnatural, because I grew up in socialism, and I grew up in socialism in the same ideological indoctrination. But there is God, and the communists and socialists ban religion and faith. So we were not allowed to pray. But one of the things that I remember is me being who I am, and the communists coming to my high school, and these were the young socialists, that's how they were called, and they wanted to pick the brightest and the best students to join them, just as similar to what these kids are going through. And my name was called out because I was a good student, and they said, you're going to come with us and you're going to receive certain privileges because we want you to be part of our group. And me being me, I said, why? And they said, well, you know, because you have good grades. If you are one of us, then you're going to have a great job, you're going to have a great career, you're going to have all the benefits and privileges. You're just like amazing, right? And I'm like, I'm not interested. No, there's no option. You have to come with us. So I decided not to. Then they called my parents. That I disgraced them, discredited the organization. I'm horrible. And I kept arguing with my parents for a little while. I said, you know what? If I am bad, I want to get a job and be a reputable member of my society based on what I do, not because I'm a member of this group. I don't want to be in politics. I never wanted to be in politics. I just hate all that. I just want to be an expert in the field that I am very passionate about. And I got spanked and I got beaten, and and I still didn't want to join them. And I never did. I don't know what happened. I don't have any connection with my family. I have nobody. So, but I have you. And I have my family. I mean, I have you, right? And I have my family at home, and I have my 3 boys, and communism will destroy unity of family unit. Communism will destroy you at your family members who disagree with you for Thanksgivings and dinner tables here and there. I'm sure you have suffered through 4 years of Trump before, and somebody telling you, how can you support this racist president? That's what they do. That's how they do it. They divide us, they sow hate, and they have a justification because you are not important. You as a unit, you're not important. The community, the group, the social class is important, and everybody are going to be poor, and everybody are going to be equally ugly, but if you stand out, you are going to be in trouble. There's no freedom of speech anywhere else other than America. I mean, there is no such thing as the Congress shall not abridge right of the people to assemble, freely speak, or freely worship. That's only here. Nowhere else these kind of laws and rules apply. So if we don't protect ourselves, if we don't protect our children, and if we believe that our Maryland is #1 economy in the union, we are really going to suffer because we're not #1, we're not #4. Our economy is number 35 according to out of 50 states, according to U.S. World Report. Our infrastructure is 38. Our opportunities are at the bottom of the pit. Fiscal stability is number 29. Maryland is number 10, one of the 10 states with the largest migration of retirees down south. I'm sure you know that. We are number 45 out of 50 states in economic opportunity and number 50 out of 50 in individual freedoms. Try getting a gun. Try get a concealed carry. Second Amendment is trashed in this state. You have to prove to the government why you need it. So individual freedoms in Maryland need to be restored. And part of the belief that Dan Cox and I share together is that we just have to do something to get us back. We don't have to be #1, but by golly, we should be like 10. We just can't be at the bottom, taxed through wazoo. We are taxed through wazoo. As someone who is licensed, today I had to take 32 continuing education hours in financial planning. Then I have to take 16 continuing education hours in insurance. Then I have to take another 32 continuing education hours in a financial advisor just to give somebody an advice for something I've been working as an advisor for 20-something years, 22 years. So we have so much work to do. How are we going to do it? Well, it's a challenge. How are we gonna win? First of all, it's a challenge. And the way to do it is not just talk to your neighbors, but part of the things that we just desperately need is your help. We will win if we can collect from 3,000 people, $350. That's when we win. Because that would allow us to print the cards that I believe we brought over so you can see, and then we can educate every single voter, independent, Democrat, whoever you may be in Maryland. I'm sure you're not living in luxury and thrill in this state. So I know that there's a lot to ask, but it's actually not. Because somebody asked me before, what are you going to do if you lose? And I said to that individual, I will never lose. You will. You will. Because there's no one else that is going to stand and throw themselves to the wolves and work 24/7 to get us back and preserve Maryland Declaration of Rights in our Constitution. We just have to start from scratch. And I know this is not like the uplifting meeting, but it's the truth. And I'm going to take your questions, sir. I know you had a question, and I did not want to